Again, all right, what is up, YouTube? Today is the first pilot episode of Reheated Takes, where we're gonna take common takes, not common takes, but any take on the internet, and we're gonna try to reheat it and see if we can make it better, see what people missed, and obviously my thoughts and opinions in it, and then obviously I want to hear back from you. So this first one that I want to talk about is Joe Rogan. Recently, you've probably seen a lot of headlines, a lot of news articles, and saying that Joe Rogan has turned on Donald Trump and he's not letting go of the Epstein thing. And what I think a lot of people are missing in this take is that not necessarily the case. We have this issue, something I've been working on, is where people want to just read the headlines. They'll go through the comment section. No one reads the damn article. No one watches the videos or the bits that are being referenced, and people miss some very important things and concept and understanding. So this, the recent, about 5 days ago today, what is today's date? Today's the 30th. Today's July 30th. About 4 days ago, I think it was last Friday, Joe Rogan had somebody on that was associated with the CIA. If somebody knows, I forgot the guy's name. I watched the interview. I forgot the guy's name and what his exact association with the CIA was. And Joe Rogan had this person on. Please let me know in the comments. Who was it? I just can't remember the name, and I don't have my computer in front of me. And they had this person on, and they were talking. They talked about a lot of topics, but the Jeffrey Epstein topic was one of the big ones that they had on, that they talked about. And you can see they go back and forth, and they acknowledge, oh, there's been conspiracies, MLK, JFK. I don't know if they specifically brought up those. I can't recall if they specifically brought up those conspiracies, but they just talk about conspiracy in general. Oh yeah, the government's been doing stuff, CIA does stuff. But isn't it ironic? We always hear about this stuff at the end of, decades later, when it doesn't really matter. And that's the unfortunate reality. But with this Epstein conspiracy, we are living in it. There are people obviously alive that it's fresh in their mind. It started back in the late 2000s, 2010, around 2010-ish. And then, went full force. Jeffrey Epstein got arrested during Donald Trump's term. So they acknowledge it, and it's you always take a caveat if this person, depending on how heavy their association is with the CIA, how serious are they about these things when they're talking about them? How much of their word can we take, right? If you think that an organization possibly is hiding things from you and they're not being truthful, why would you want to hear from somebody associated with that whole organization, right? The whole MAGA thing about drain the swamp, but I actually feel like Mango is actually expanding the swamp and throwing more water in it, making it much more swampy with all the things that he's been doing recently. So back to Joe Rogan, he attacks the Epstein situation. He attacks it, but during the entire interview, he never calls out Donald Trump. He never really digs into Trump. Right? The buck stops with Donald Trump. It's his administration. He hired these people, so yeah, they can make mistakes and they should be held accountable for them. But the buck stops with him. This is his administration. Everything that happens here, regardless of who does it, is ultimately the fault of Donald Trump, right? But we know he never takes accountability. So Joe Rogan pretty much dances around the topics. He talks about Pam Bondi, blaming her, blames Cash, and whatever the hell Cash's real name is. Somebody please tell me, because I know that's not his maiden name. He very nicely whitewashed it and came with the most D-bag nickname that you could possibly come up with. And he's always looking like this, right? He's either getting the in a Men in Black movie, getting his memory wiped, or he's a deer in the headlights, is something I can think of. If anybody has better images, thoughts about what Cash looks like, I would actually think that he looks like, well, one thing I was thinking about, I want to hear if anybody has better jokes on this, is Cash looks like, he's getting a surprise prostate exam. So let me know if you have any better ones than the ones I mentioned. So he talks about Cash, and Joe Rogan talks about, I had the FBI director talking into his mic, I had the FBI director there, and he told me what he told me, and what do you want me to do? He's the FBI director. You want me to push back? Yes, Joe Rogan, we do want you to effing push back, just like you push back on every other scientist and health expert that came onto your show a million times and talked about things that had been accepted in the medical community. That's a conversation for another day. But Joe Rogan, you built your platform on pushing back, and this is the one thing where you go like, well, that was the FBI. What do you want me to tell them? They're the administration. Yes, your whole platform that was built on going against the grain, going against the waves, and pushing back on anything, right? Wide range. It didn't even have to be medical things, aliens, everything. You were always like, oh, I'm a questioner. I like to question, and that was what your platform is built on. But this is the one time you decide to, I'll put it nicely, fence it. And if you fence it any longer, you might need to go into the emergency room and get off Donald Trump's shaft, because that's what it looks like, pretty much what you're doing. It's clear as day. You're fence sitting, you're defending for the administration without really defending. So you're giving people, I wouldn't even say meat, you're giving them like maybe some pieces of beef jerky. And that's not cool. Right? Yes, push back on Cash and say like, well, you had multiple interviews, you came out, you tweeted, you said things, you alluded to that we are going to drain the swamp, we're going to hold people accountable, we're going to get to the bottom of this Jeffrey Epstein thing. So when they come out and say nothing to see here, and he backs Pam Bondi, it's his boss, but still, he backs Bondi and does a complete 360. Well, 360, 180, 360, you would end up back where you were. With these people, it sometimes seems like that they are always going in circles. But does a complete 180 and decides not to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein thing, saying like nothing to see here. And you just go like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, Joe. And so, yeah, he lightly attacks Pam Bondi and says there needs to be accountability without really digging into names. Cash came up, Pam Bondi came up, Donald Trump's name never get mentioned in negativity, because now you feel like you're beholden to Donald Trump, which is really damn shame, Joe Rogan. I thought you were different. I did. I wasn't a big fan of growing up watching Joe Rogan, but I always thought his podcast was cool. I didn't always agree with his views, but I could respect what he was doing. He has multitudes of guests come on, talk about things. He pushes back on his guests, regardless of how expert they may seem, or sometimes they'll push back, and it's a good pushback because he's asking questions that the audience may have, and just to have a good conversation going that you normally wouldn't see in a realm. But in this case, Joe Rogan is going to lose credibility. He's going to lose credibility fast, because depending on how this Epstein thing goes, and the flames keep climbing higher and higher with this Epstein saga, it's not going away. It's the one thing that I'm amazed of. I could have never guessed in a million years that this would be the thing that Donald Trump has to be held accountable on, with everything that he's done. And Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, we'll talk later, have just decided not to talk about it, which is a damn shame, because if Barack Hussein Obama was on here, or Sleepy Joe was on these files or associated with this, they're trying to throw it on them, but I don't, think that it's necessarily to be thrown on them. Definitely not Barack Hussein Obama, right? Doing that my best Donald Trump impression. It's definitely not on him. Joe Biden definitely could be definitely argument can be made that he mishandled it, or he didn't care about it, should have dug into it. But this was Trump's thing. He ran on it. People around him ran on it. Fox News edited up clip to make it look like he was definitely running on it. So with all that being said, for Joe Rogan to not mention what Donald Trump by name and truly hold his feet to the fire is a damn shame. And Joe Rogan, you should be ashamed of yourself. And that's it. The take is done, and we're going to call it right there.